I can fall in love with a place just from reading about it. So just as well I didn't do much advanced research. That way I could fall in love with this place the old-fashioned way, at first sight. This is St. John, New Brunswick. Canada's best-kept secret. Sometimes you get to a place and you can just see yourself there. Hard to explain, but this is what happened. I like slightly larger cities. This is only 70,000 people, even though that is 10% of the entire province. And for those of us with their heads somewhere between the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, it is a third more than London, England in the year 1500. The Uptown is such a beautifully preserved Victorian city, and it's so alive. Yes, we did just spend a week in Bathurst, New Brunswick. That might have had some impact. It may look Victorian, but it isn't. It was actually one of the first places visited by Europeans in Canada. Samuel Champlain, my very favorite person in all of the Canadian history, got here before he even moved to found Quebec City in 1608. Of course, you can't see any of it now. Or can you? No, don't go there. Actually, I will, but not today. After Champlain, there wasn't much here in terms of material culture until some mid-1700s, following the British conquest of Acadia, the fall of New France, and then the American War of Independence. Many of the loyalists who fled to Nova Scotia ultimately ended up here. And there are even one or two houses that still remain from this era and are available to public, where I shall not drag you because my family wouldn't let me. They love old buildings, you see. I'll leave you some useful links in the description. St. John was incorporated by Royal Charter in 1785, the oldest city in Canada, they say. Well, I'm not quite sure where that leaves Quebec City and Montreal. I don't know, maybe French places don't count or something. Benedict Arnold, the famous turncoat who went from British to American and back again, he who attacked Quebec City on the last day of 1775, took the lower town before taking the upper town, and as a result got himself shot at like a partridge, albeit a partridge in a blizzard. Well, that Benedict Arnold, he lived in St. John after the war. By all accounts a horrible person, he had to move on though. The St. John Incorporation Charter was a little peculiar. To vote, trade or fish, you had to be white and a loyalist. Yeah, that was only changed in 1870. So, as a result, St. John already being made up of two towns, Partown, the city centre, and Carleton across the river. And surely you remember Guy Carleton, Baron Dorchester from Montreal last year. Named after him it was. But I digress, I shall stop. So, as a result of the limitations in the city charter, a third parallel town developed, today's North End. White, black, green or purple, loyalist or not, you could work, fish or run shop there without it being anybody's business. Because the Americans attacked during the War of Independence, it was reasonable to expect them to do so again in the 1812 invasion. In the end they didn't, but St. John gained a new fortification. This, the Carleton Martello Tower, to complement Fort Howe up on the hill at North End. It was never used, but it looks nice. And what of you? It is an especially good view of Partridge Island, the city's immigrant quarantine station from the Loyalist times until well into the 20th century. It came especially handy from the 1830s onwards, with the influx of Irish fleeing the potato famines. Even though many did not live to step ashore, soon half the city was Irish, making it the most Irish, the Irish-most city in Canada. Proud heritage to this day, judging by the number of Irish pubs in town. So the first half of the 19th century was boom time in St. John, with 30,000 people by 1850, third largest city in British North America. Only Montreal and Quebec were bigger. Why? Well, they had timber, and everybody needed timber, especially Britain. Rule Britannia, rule the waves. Exactly. This was the third or fourth largest shipbuilding port in the world, depending on the source. There was the passenger traffic and the maritime trade. The Atlantic on one side, overland routes to America and Quebec and Montreal on the others. Things looked positively brilliant. And then it all started going, well, hoofs up. This, nicknamed the Three Sisters, is a souvenir of St. John's days of glory. A Victorian puppy, that'd be precision-approached path indicator, not a dog. You could see those lights a mile out, and if you could see all three, you were fine, heading straight for the harbor. One or two, on the other hand, not so good. But focus, woman, focus! From 1860 onwards, it was one non-stop disaster. First, cholera. Well, London was suffering, so why shouldn't St. John have its fair share, right? Then the steamship. The steamships took over in the 1860s, and they were not made of wood, they were steel. The shipyards and the timber industry and trade went through the floor. In 1867, New Brunswick, as a founding province, joined the Canadian Confederation. You'd think that'd be a good thing. Except that the new protective customs duties kind of killed the international trade. And then, just as the city was trying to pick up the pieces, in 1877 a disastrous fire. Entire uptown razed to the ground. Which is why 1877 is about as old as it gets as far as buildings are concerned. Well, they rebuilt the city, but the going was tough. In time, the Canadian Pacific Railway arrived, some of the timber trade and the shipbuilding returned. Almost 1,200 of de Havilland mosquitoes were made of New Brunswick wood. It was never quite the same hustle and bustle, but this city is a fighter. It will pick itself up again and again. Maybe that's why it feels so right. Never give up. I like that. And, you know, there are guided tours and museums here, such as the Loyalist House. No, I won't get over it. Or the Imperial Theatre. Did you know that the mayor from Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer came from St. John? But sometimes it's best not to do, just be. Observe, soak it up. No rush. No rush at all. And after you've been to your heart's content and want to do something again, there are some things that you simply should not miss. The first one being the reversing falls. This is the Bay of Fundy, highest tides in the world. So, at low tide, St. John's River flows through these rapids like a, well, normal river. But at high tide, it becomes the Mr. Hyde of rivers, because the high tide makes it flow up the hill. All the 100,000 tons per second, or whatever stupendous number it is. Look, down, up, low tide, high tide. And you could pay for a ticket or a meal to be there, only I don't know why you'd want to, because the best place to see it is actually right here. Yeah, this is very sad. Another good place is here, where in addition to the reversing falls, you can see where South America touches Africa. No, it's not a joke, it's science. Geology, to be precise. These light grey rocks, elephant grey, formed some 700 million years ago, where South America is today. And these darker ones are also from south of the equator, but from Africa. Only took them some 120 million years to actually get here. And if you come in the spring at low tide of an evening full of moonlight and a quarter full of moonshine, maybe you'll see the Agwag. He's a monster. And he's also made up. If you're looking for a supernatural, your best shot here is the park on this hill, the site of the former provincial asylum, massively haunted, they say. Right, next. The Bay of Fundy, I said. The topmost attraction in New Brunswick is Hopewell Rocks, caves and rock formations curved by those so very powerful tides. That's an over 2 hours drive each way. When, in only about 40 minutes, you can get to the village of St. Martin's and St. Martin's Sea Caves. Alright, the Hopewell Rocks are a bit taller, and I guess there's more of them, but basically, it's the same. It's supposed to be a bit of a secret destination. Well, that doesn't look like a very well-kept secret to me. Just be careful, cause that tide really comes in fast and you can get cut off. Also, bear in mind there aren't any public facilities, so you'll have to find a restaurant. For a truly private experience, try the port in the village itself at low tide. A secret cove, some doors, some windows, and even some dragon eggs. Come on, that is so a dragon nest. They also have a very decent espresso, a lovely ice cream, I was told, a tiny tourist information wet museum in the old lighthouse, and 2 old covered bridges. Well, one is about to become a new covered bridge, but all the same. On the way in and or on the way out, do stop for fresh seafood. Plenty of places by the roadside, and it's delicious.
Piece of bread.
Unless, of course, you don't like shrimp. And don't go straight back on a full stomach. Follow the coast. There's a surprise around every corner. Just mind the foghorn. And why would they need a foghorn? Well, a day at the beach might be one occasion. No, that only happened the once. This is New River Beach, what we hoped for in Bathurst. It's about half an hour's drive south of the city. Here's some practical information. In the interest of full transparency, the water is cold. The surf isn't quite what we're used to, and of course it's tidal. So you'll get plenty of exercise moving your stuff up and down. We so should have done a few more days, but we had a plan and we followed the plan. Hindsight is an amazing thing. Gremlin on the road.
big old dinosaur poop.
Follow the poop mark and maybe we'll find the dinosaur.
Follow the poop.